Welcome to City Vision University's podcast, providing book summaries of books on rescue missions, city missions, and the Salvation Army. Imagine trying to mass produce a family.
Right, which sounds totally impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine writing a strict corporate rulebook that legally mandates your staff to give, 70 displaced kids a goodnight kiss before bed.
It's just wild to even think about that happening in a real organization.
It really is. Today, we are taking a deep dive into a group that actually did exactly that.
Oh, yeah, and we are unpacking an 8-decade history here.
We really are. We're looking at a multi-million rand welfare operation. They ran children's homes, hospices, chapels, and they did all of this for nearly a century.
And the craziest part, they built this entire sprawling network without ever hiring a single professional fundraiser.
Which is just nuts. I mean, we're glad you're here with us today because we are looking at an 80th anniversary booklet from 1982. It celebrates the Cape Town City Mission, covering its history from 1902 to 1982.
Yeah, and this source material completely shatters our modern assumptions about how a nonprofit is supposed to scale.
Right, because usually, if a charity wants to grow, they corporatize.
Exactly. You hire a development director, you launch massive capital campaigns, and usually you soften your core ideology to get more donors.
You make it clinical and measurable.
Yeah. But the Cape Town City Mission rejected almost all of those steps.
So the mission of our deep dive today is to really explore this paradox. How do you go from one guy in a slum living room begging for meat bones to a massive network of care facilities?
It's a huge shift.
Yeah.
And it involves extreme poverty, unyielding faith, and literally ledgers and rules.
It's basically a masterclass in grassroots economics and the total friction between rigid doctrine and, trying to institutionalize human compassion.
To really get how they pulled this off in Cape Town, we actually had to rewind and look at the blueprint they used.
Right, which didn't even start in South Africa.
No, it didn't. It started about 5,000 miles away in 1832 in the slums of Glasgow, Scotland.
Under a guy named David Naismith.
Exactly. Naismith was just, as the source says, moved in his spirit by the misery he saw.
And Glasgow in the 1830s was rough. I mean, it was the bleeding edge of the Industrial Revolution.
Right, which meant rapid urbanization, massive overcrowding, and just zero sanitation.
Yeah, the text actually notes that the Glasgow slums were reportedly worse than the worst parts of London.
Which is saying something. People were just pouring in for factory work, and the infrastructure completely collapsed.
If you were poor, you had no medical treatment. You just suffered through disease and, honestly, rampant drunkenness.
Yeah, and Naismith realized the traditional church model was totally failing these people.
Because the church expected people to, put on their Sunday best and come to a building.
Right, but Naismith knew you had to take the intervention directly into the filth of the slums.
So he starts the Glasgow City Mission.
Which basically becomes the mother of all city missions. This model exports to Dublin, to New York, and eventually to Cape Town.
But when it gets to Cape Town, it totally stalls out at first, right?
Yeah, it really does. In 1878, this man named Robert Campbell tries to bring the work to the very poor in Cape Town.
And he tries for 2 years, but then he leaves in 1880.
And the whole thing just goes into the doldrums.
Yeah.
It sits there doing nothing until 1902.
I look at this and it feels like a failed franchise model of compassion.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Like you take this working blueprint from industrial Scotland and just try to copy-paste it onto a totally different continent.
Yeah, with completely different cultural and economic dynamics.
Does the source show that a Glasgow model could actually work in an African context?
Well, the short answer is no, not on its own. A structural idea alone doesn't do anything without immense human sacrifice to adapt it.
Right.
So to make it stick in Cape Town in 1902, they needed someone who wasn't just following a corporate strategy.
They needed Frederick George Lowe.
Exactly. An English immigrant who just threw himself into the work.
I love reading about Lowe's. He founds the city slum mission, and his methods are so hyper-local.
Totally. He didn't sit in an office writing grants.
No, he literally begged for meat bones. He went around until a friend in the meat trade agreed to give him 20 pounds of meat every week.
Just to keep a soup kitchen running.
And the sanitation stuff. He personally superintended the application of disinfectants to these foul-smelling drains in District 6.
Yeah, drains that had been completely neglected. He actually got the mayor to donate the disinfectants, but Lowe was the one out there doing the dirty work.
He had this crazy routine. Like every Wednesday, he'd hire a wagonette.
Oh, yeah. And he'd take 12 to 14 women from District 6 to the city hospital.
Right, just to bring flowers and sweets to the sick people who were totally isolated.
And then on Sundays, he'd host a free breakfast for 150 to 200 street kids.
Which is just a massive undertaking for one guy.
It was his whole life. He called himself a message boy for Jesus.
I mean, he literally used one of his 2 living rooms as a triage center to bind up wounds.
He really did. The source highlights this theological driving force behind him, actually quoting John Calvin.
Oh, right. It is faith alone that saves, but the faith that saves is not alone.
Exactly. His faith demanded physical action.
But that level of action comes with a massive cost.
A deadly cost, yeah.
It's this tragic irony. In 1924, he's at a concert put on by the boys from his mission.
And he doesn't have an overcoat.
Right. Either he gave it away or he just didn't own one. He catches a chill.
And it becomes a fatal illness. He literally dies of exposure.
While watching the kids he saved, it's like a burning candle analogy, you know?
How do you mean?
He burned incredibly bright, but he melted himself down completely. As inspiring as Lowe is, isn't this proof that individual martyrdom is a terrible long-term organizational strategy?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And his friends realized that exact thing the moment he died.
Because if the mission is just one guy's energy, it dies with him.
Exactly. He had somehow managed to save up 100 pounds before he died.
Which is amazing on its own.
Right. But his successors knew that if they just spent that 100 pounds continuing his routine, the mission would vanish when the money ran out.
So they had to institutionalize his vision.
They had to. Just a month after his death, on July 22nd, 1924, they formally constituted the Cape Town City Mission.
Using that 100 pounds.
Yeah. And when you look at the 1924 Constitution in the source, it is incredibly strict.
It's so rigid. It explicitly dictates in all capital letters that the work must remain evangelical and undenominational.
The founders were just terrified of mission drift.
They didn't want the money to end up funding secular social work generations later.
Right. They entrenched a very specific doctrinal statement. You had to agree on strict tenets of sin, redemption, and bodily resurrection.
They even had a dissolution clause.
Yeah, that part is fascinating.
If the mission ever stops functioning, the assets don't just go anywhere.
No, the Bible Institute of South Africa is legally mandated to take the assets.
And give them to another Protestant evangelical organization with the exact same aims.
They build a legal vault around the theology.
It's honestly like writing a spiritual prenuptial agreement.
That's exactly what it is.
But I have to ask, doesn't this extreme rigidity prevent a charity from adapting to future crises?
You would think so. But that tension is the perfect setup for what happens next.
Because we have to fast forward to 1982.
Right, and the landscape of Cape Town had completely changed by then.
They had to stretch that 1924 Constitution to its absolute limits.
Oh, definitely. By the early 80s, their operations are just sprawling.
They're doing factory lunch hour evangelism, massive Christmas parcel relief, and they have this huge network of chapels.
But the crucial context here is how the city's geography shifted.
Yeah, the source explicitly notes that the mission suffered under the Group Areas Act.
Right. Entire communities had their properties expropriated.
So people were moved from places like Claremont out to Hanover Park and the Cape Flats.
And the mission had a choice. Stay in their empty buildings or follow the people.
And they followed the people. It's like a dandelion, right?
Oh, I like that analogy.
The legislation blows the mission out of its original home, but wherever those seeds land, places like Atlantis, Mitchell's Plain, Heideveld New Chapels, and Crutches sprout up.
Exactly. But the challenges in these new areas were totally different and very specific.
Like in Macassar.
Yeah, in Macassar, they were battling the tot system.
For those who don't know, that's this historical exploitative practice where farm workers were paid a portion of their wages in alcohol.
It was devastating for families. And in Salt River, the mission was counseling troubled youth in a predominantly Muslim community.
So they evolved from just feeding people soup to fighting systemic social despair.
Navigating massive government relocations and dealing with severe family deterioration in these new sub-economic housing estates.
But a chapel isn't really enough when children have no parents to go home to.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And that's what necessitated the creation of their welfare branch.
Right. In 1972, they established the Cape Town City Mission Homes, operating as WO 272.
And the specific facilities they acquired are just incredible.
Like the Bruce Duncan House in Hanover Park.
Yeah, which was licensed for 60 boys, but they were constantly accommodating 70.
And then there's the A.W. Baker House in Crawford. This story is crazy.
A real estate miracle?
Literally, it was a 70-bed hostel for young working ladies, and they bought it from the YWCA for 21,000 Rand.
And is valued at 400,000 Rand.
Wait, really? How did they pull that off?
Well, the mission superintendent actually spent a year helping the YWCA sort out their finances, just as a favor.
Wow.
Yeah, and in return, they practically gifted them the building.
That is wild. They also had the G.H. Stark Center.
Right, which was a cottage-style haven for senior citizens.
Complete with the Orm Wing, sanatorium, and hospice.
And the G.W. Williams Center, named after Upa Williams.
I love Upa Williams. He was a retired, successful butcher who just volunteered as a handyman and driver for them.
It was a massive operation. But what's really fascinating is how they ran these homes.
The family unit system.
Yes. The rules in the memorandum for this system were incredibly strict.
Because they knew institutionalization destroys kids.
Right, exactly. So they tried to legally manufacture a family environment.
The rules literally stated that male staff must portray a father figure and females a mother figure.
They mandated intimacy. Bedtime required tucking in and goodnight kisses.
Can you imagine trying to mass produce that? Like trying to mandate a mother's love through a corporate rule book.
It's such a paradox. You have exhausted staff members, and the rules are ordering them to perform acts of parental love.
They even forbade staff from running their units in competition with each other.
And to enforce that, they didn't cite modern management theory. They cited the biblical principle of John 17.21.
Trying to use heavy theology to stop staff drama?
Basically, yeah. But to protect this manufactured family, the administration created an intense set of internal ethics.
I was reading the household rules from the source, and they are fierce.
Oh, absolutely. They strictly prohibited treating children as guinea pigs in experimentation.
The exact quote says, "The home is not an experimental research station where cases can be discussed with curious sensation seekers."
Which is incredibly progressive, trauma-informed care for 1982.
Right. They mandated confidentiality and even required blood tests upon admission.
But then right alongside that, you have deeply traditional, rigid physical rules.
Like daily kitchen scrubs and mandatory Sunday school.
And the rules around physical discipline were highly regulated.
No pushing or kicking allowed.
Corporal punishment was allowed, but only as an absolute last resort.
And if it happened, it had to be logged in a specific punishment book.
Which then had to be signed by the chairman. The bureaucracy was intense.
And we haven't even talked about the economics of all this care yet.
The finances are maybe the most mind-blowing part.
The daily running cost for the child center was so low, the source breaks it down to R5.71 a day per child.
Meaning R1.84 for every 8 hours.
The overall mission ran on just R280 a day. The A.W. Baker House cost R300 a day.
And they operated on a strict cash basis policy.
Meaning they absolutely refused to go into debt for any reason.
Zero debt. And remember, zero professional fundraisers.
It relies entirely on grassroots support. Like they always said, where there is a will, there is the Cape Town City Mission.
They bank their whole survival on the quiet generosity of local people.
I marvel at the efficiency. It's like running a modern corporation on the budget of a lemonade stand.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But doesn't this extreme frugality risk burning out the staff? I mean, just like F.G. Lowe burned out.
Oh, absolutely. That is the ultimate tension of this entire deep dive.
You're balancing infinite spiritual aims with incredibly finite human and financial resources.
You're demanding boundless love on a R5.71 daily budget.
Let's synthesize this journey for a second.
Sure.
We started in the squalor of 1830s Glasgow, right?
Yeah, with a guy realizing the church had to leave its building.
Then we see a man giving away his winter coat and dying in 1920s Cape Town.
And from there, it evolves into this massive 1980s network of hostels, chapels, and hospices.
Operating on absolute pennies, but governed by this ironclad constitution.
It's an unbelievable trajectory.
So what's the big takeaway here?
Well, I think the source material leaves us with a really difficult question about charity today.
Okay, what is it?
We often think that to scale up our impact, we have to lose our personal touch.
Right, that a giant organization can't possibly operate like a family.
Exactly. But the Cape Town City Mission tried to legally mandate love. They required tucking in by the rule book.
Which is just so fascinating.
So for anyone listening, whether you're building a business, a charity, or a community today, what is the right balance?
Can you institutionalize a message boy for Jesus?
Or does true compassion always require someone willing to step out and give away their own coat?
That is a phenomenal thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure to unpack it with you.
And to you listening, keep seeking out these incredible stories hidden inside the footnotes of history. We'll catch you next time.